Welcome to the CBT Dive, a vodcast that goes into the lives of real people with real struggles. Each episode welcomes a new guest who wants to explore a challenging situation using the most common cognitive behavioral therapy tool, the thought record. Your host, Rahim, is a social worker and psychotherapist based in Toronto and well known for his work in LGBTQ communities. He's created the CBT Dive to demystify what therapy can look like and share intervention skills for wellness. We hope that each episode helps you along on your own journey for insight and self-compassion.
All right, welcome once again to the CBT Dive. I'm excited to have a guest named Kareem join us today. Kareem is a Middle Eastern man, queer and living in Toronto, is in his early 30s and works as a manager in retail. From what he's told me, he's never tried CBT before, though it's been recommended. And for some of the things he struggled with, he has tried pharmaceutical interventions, but recently says that they haven't been working so great. So welcome our guest, Kareem. How are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Kareem, what can you tell us about, a bit about your mental health journey or about what you've heard when it comes to different kinds of therapy, including CBT?
Sure. So in the past, I've been on antidepressants on and off, and CBT was always recommended as another form of treatment. I think my journey is a bit different. I did not commit long-term to CBT, but I have a little bit of a good idea of how it works. Okay. I think one of the biggest challenges in Toronto as well is, for me at least, was the cost of CBT and having needed to do it all a longer term. It's not just like a one-time thing or a two-time thing. It's something continuous. So part of it also did not really help me to commit to it, although you can have priorities, and I could have set it up as a priority, but I chose other priorities. So yeah, that's a bit of my journey.
Sure. No, thanks. I really appreciate that. I think the cost of therapy really is a barrier for a lot of people, and the cost actually makes it feel like more of a commitment, right? And I think especially in Canada where we don't think about paying for healthcare in the same way that people in other places do. And so suddenly when you're paying like a big chunk of change, like $100 or $120 an hour, at least, we're like, oh my gosh, like how am I going to make my ends meet? So I can totally appreciate that. So Kareem, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen, and what you're going to see is a thought record. And this thought record is an opportunity for us to work through a situation that creates some anxiety, distress, or sadness for you. And we're going to work through that situation in a linear way to better understand what's going on for you. And one of the benefits, I think, of this is going to be that you get a free session of CBT with me today. How does that sound?
Sounds great.
Great. Okay. So before this call, we identified a situation that we might work through that brings up difficult feelings and challenging thoughts for you. So that situation is working in retail, right? As you do as a manager, and seeing a couple shopping together. Now, tell me a bit about this scenario in that, so when you're working and you see couples, what feelings come up for you? So let's focus on feelings first.
I think multiple, I would say. The idea of seeing couple together, depending on also like their dynamic and if they seem happy and enjoying their time, you feel the feelings like, oh, I wish I had that. I think that's the first thing that pops up.
Okay. And so you say, I wish I had that, and that goes into like that you're tiptoeing into what your immediate thought is, which is actually really helpful. So I'm going to put it in the fourth column. I wish I had that. But when it comes to feelings, I wish I had that suggests maybe you feel a bit of longing or sadness.
I would say sadness. you reflect, you're like, oh, like why am I not capable of having that, or why don't I have that? So I think sadness would be the first feeling.
Okay. And as you're talking, because you're giving me thoughts, I may as well type those out too. So one of your thoughts is, I'm not capable of finding this type of relationship. So sadness is is a feeling. Now let's think about what other feelings come up. I'll name a few if they're hard for you to think of. So anxiety, grief, excitement.
Yeah, I would say not anxiety, but maybe grief a little bit also as I grow older, and I'm early 30s, soon be late 30s, and so on. You feel like, okay, life is moving on, and you feel like you're still not able to achieve that type of relationship with someone.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and would another feeling be loneliness?
In that moment, not as much as maybe towards maybe the end of the day, or when you go home and you realize you're alone. But being at work and that you're busy and not, it wouldn't be the first thing seeing that.
Okay, so I'm going to put loneliness in, and we're going to know that it's not a very prominent feeling, but it's kind of there in the background. Another feeling I'm wondering if you experience or not is isolation or worry or envy.
Maybe envy, actually. I was about to say jealousy, but maybe envy. It's again, you're like, why don't I have that? Why can't I have that? What am I doing wrong?
Yeah.
Or what's wrong with me?
So when you say what's wrong with me, the feeling I'm getting there is maybe inadequacy.
For sure, yeah.
Forgetting how to spell inadequacy. That's why. Thank goodness for that. Okay, so sadness, grief, envy, inadequacy, loneliness. Any other feelings you can think of? Fear?
Not sure. Maybe.
Okay.
Doesn't feel like as a first response.
No, it doesn't. No. Okay. Let's go through and rate each of these feelings. So we've got sadness, grief, envy, inadequacy, loneliness. Let's rate each of them on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most intense that you feel it in this situation, and 1 being the least intense. So how would you rate sadness?
Say 7.
Okay. What about grief?
4.
Envy?
5.
Inadequacy?
7.
And loneliness?
I would say 5.
Okay. Now, you're working in retail, you see the happy couple shopping together, and you feel sadness, grief, envy, inadequacy, and loneliness. What do you do in those moments, if anything? Do you take a break? Do you have a conversation with them? Do you cry? What do you do?
I think reality does not afford me to do anything but just to continue on working. So if they need help, I would be helping them. I would be curious to see the dynamic as well, like how they treat each other, how they speak to each other. Again, I would emphasize on happy couple because I've seen the total opposite, which I leave the scene saying, thank God I'm not in a relationship. So I would say just interact with them. That would be the behavior.
That makes sense. Yeah. And it makes sense for you, that's part of your job to interact with them, I imagine. And so, but it's interesting to know that you're interacting with them, but part of you is curious about their dynamic. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to move us on to the next column. Now, this column is about automatic thoughts. It's the things that come into your mind when you're in this situation. And you've already named a little bit of it, right? So you said, I wish I had that. And when you say that, you mean a relationship, right?
Yes.
Okay. The other thought that comes up is, I'm not capable of finding this type of relationship. or I'll just say our relationship. What other thoughts come to your mind? So when you feel, for example, when you feel grief, you said something about age and time. And I wonder if there's a thought there.
Yeah, I think it's looking back to maybe in terms of grief, maybe people you've met in the past and you could have worked things out. You could have got into that level where you're in a relationship and you're out and about shopping with them or whatever the case is.
So I've met people in the past whom I could have worked things out with.
Correct.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
And I guess another feeling that's kind of showing up in the background, we don't have to rate it, but I'll just add it in, and is like there's a hint of regret there, it seems.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you think about inadequacy, I think that's where this idea comes in that I'm not capable. Tell me more about that. When you think about your inadequacy, like, how do you understand it? Like, what makes it hard for you to be in a relationship? Or why do you think it's been harder for you relative to other people?
I think it comes from, again, living in a city that is highly populated and there's a lot of people to meet. And you feel like you're always meeting people, but for some reason, it's just about that first meeting and nothing goes beyond that. And it's always just the case. It's the cycle of, at least from my experience living in Toronto, it's a cycle of meeting just people for one time and then never seeing them again.
Okay, so there's lots of short interactions. And part of it's like you live in a big city, there's too many people. Help me understand that a bit more, though. Does it feel like part of the big city dynamic is like there's pressure to show all of your cards at once or to make a really good first impression? Is that the idea? Like there's lots of people, so you have a small amount of time with each one. So there's lots of pressure to make a good first impression. Is that part of it?
I'm not sure. I feel like there's always that pressure to make a first good impression, like no matter what the case is. But at the same time, you sense that that interaction is not really about meeting someone. It feels like something that is just like happening on autopilot. Just like, okay, let's do that. Let's get it done. And you might think it was a great interaction and you kind of agree to each other again. But once you follow up, that never happens.
Okay. So when you say, let's get this done, are you talking about dating or casual sex?
I guess dating, or let's like the first initial meetup.
And so you think about the first initial meetup and you're kind of thinking, like the thoughts you've developed are, in my initial meetings, we always leave being on different pages.
I think I always leave thinking that we are on the same page, but then after reaching out again, saying, let's do that again, or having said during the meetup, it's, oh, we should do that again for sure. But that never happens, for example. So it makes you think, okay, I thought we both had a great time. It was verbally mentioned that we should do it again, but then you never see or hear from that person again. That leads to the feeling inadequate. Like they did not like you. They just told you they liked you because it's in the moment. And maybe it's just to make it less awkward. But in reality, when it came to show that they really liked you and they want to see you again, that never happens. So that's, I think, the biggest contributor to feeling inadequate.
Sure. Now, so in your initial meetups, you leave thinking we're on the same page, but then the other person doesn't follow up. When that happens, what does that make you? What does that say about you, or what meaning do you draw out of that?
You know what? That changed throughout the years. I do know that each individual is different and we all have circumstances in our lives. So I would not assume that person needs to follow up with me, but I do put an effort to make sure that I'm opening the channel of communication. Like, hey, I'm open to communicating. I'm open to doing this again, meeting you again. So I make it very clear and I reach out again.
Yeah.
I'll just make sure to set up the scene that I am open to that. But again, you never know what's happening in someone's life. And I think my perception of that have changed throughout the years.
Okay. And so present day, when, you're working in retail, you see a happy couple shopping together, it makes you reflect on your own attempts at relationships. And you're thinking about the very beginning, like these initial meetups where you think you're on the same page, but then the other person doesn't follow up or doesn't respond to your follow-up. And part of the meaning you're making of that is, okay, maybe they have a busy life or maybe something came up for them. Are there any other meanings you draw out of that? Like, what thoughts does it make you think about yourself?
So, yeah, I think it would start with assuming that they have a busy life, but then you slowly start moving in towards another type of conclusion and like, oh, it was me. They don't like me. Maybe I'm not attractive enough. Maybe I'm not what they're looking for. Like, it depends on the case, but it's always, I think and the conclusion is I would look back inwards and like, okay, what's wrong with me?
So let's continue to go on this track. You're thinking, what's wrong with me? And you assume, like, you try to make sense of it, right? And you say, what is it they're looking for that they didn't find in me? And one of the things is, maybe I'm not attractive enough. What else?
I think also being part of the gay community, you think about look, appearance and body type, and maybe I'm not tall enough, maybe I'm not muscled enough. I think a lot of things come up, depending on the situation. Yeah. But I think sometimes it's that, sometimes maybe in terms of professional success, maybe do you think, oh, I'm not successful enough for that? Again, I think every time is different conclusion.
Yeah. Okay. So these are some important thoughts that I think you've got down here. So maybe I'm not attractive enough. Maybe I don't fit the gay ideal, which has an emphasis on appearance. I'm glad you brought that up because I think that's a difficult reality a lot of us are trying to navigate through. And the other one is maybe I'm not successful enough. So when you say, what's wrong with me, you've itemized the kinds of things somebody else might be thinking, right? And you're thinking those things. We think that they think that because part of you sometimes thinks that. So I'm glad we got those out. I also wonder if we were to go back to one of your previous thoughts, I've met people in the past whom I could have worked things out with. Now, this speaks to, I guess, the regret or even the grief. And I wonder, what are some more thoughts you think about when you think about past relationships or people you could have worked things out with?
I think that part is a bit different in the sense of maybe I've met someone that we're both interested in each other. There is aspect of this continuing. But also, again, maybe at the time, my attachment style was very different than theirs, and we were not communicating well in terms of that. And it took me really to hit maybe my mid-30s to understand attachment styles and how it works when you meet other people. So reflecting back in terms of when I say regret, I'm like, oh, my attachment style was this and theirs was this, and this is why we always clashed or we argued or insecurities came out. So that's when there's a bit of regret and reflection, I'm like, oh, I could have done better.
Okay. So part of it, if I'm hearing you right, is you have new knowledge now that you didn't in the past, and part of you wishes you knew more then. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. More about. So I'm going to say I wish I knew more about myself and communication. In the past. And I wonder if, even though you know that stuff now, you still experience a bit of the grief or a bit of the envy. And like, do you have I wonder if you have a belief or a thought around the ways you are compatible or incompatible with people?
I think every person I meet, I would feel that differently. And I think
Okay.
you meet a lot of people who make you either like certain things about yourself or question certain things about yourself. And it really depends on the individual in front of me.
Okay. Now I want to come back to your most initial thought, which was, I wish I had a relationship and I'm not capable of finding a relationship. Now, I don't want to say that that's true, but let's say it was. Why would you think you're not capable?
Maybe again, going back to the attachment style, my needs are very usually higher than maybe a certain person. So the person that I'm looking to date, maybe they can't provide that. There's certain
Emotional needs? What kind of needs? Sorry.
I would say, yeah, for sure, emotional.
Okay, so I have high emotional needs that others don't understand. Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, what else were you going to say? I feel like I interrupted you there.
That's okay. I think also the other part is where you are in your life. Sometimes I've given up on situation where I've, again, maybe dealing with depression, dealing with anxiety. I'm like, I really can't deal with this. It's way much easier just to end things and walk away.
Okay. So it's easier to be alone or walk away. And at this present moment, do you feel like that's where you're at, where you're like, for the most part, thinking it's easier to be alone, but you just get like this envy that gets activated when you're working and you see couples shopping together?
I would say no. The being alone part and walk away was at a younger age with really not knowing how to deal with depression and anxiety.
Tell me a bit about how depression and anxiety affect you being in a relationship, or you meeting somebody, or your ability to maintain a relationship. How do those play out?
For sure. So I think dealing with depression, way much more than anxiety, depression to be exact, sometimes you're less social. You can't provide that intimate connection to someone who is looking for it. You're not up for seeing them, talking to them, having sex with them. All of those things are on hold. So meeting that person who would understand that, it's hard to assume you will meet a person who would be fully okay with that and just waiting for things to turn around.
So the thought I have here is, my depression gets in the way of meeting someone wanting connection or sex. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
Okay. And so, okay, we've got a good number of thoughts here. We've run on to another page, which is good. I know you're laughing because you're like, oh my goodness, I have too many thoughts, but that's honestly never a bad thing. What I'm going to do is I'm going to trim a couple of thoughts out of here so you can see them better. Okay. So, and I'm going to change the font size so that you can see them better. Having it all on one page is just so important to me. Okay, here we go. So we've kind of got three clusters of thoughts, and underneath each one, wherever I probed you to ask something further, I've kind of put a little arrow in the additional thought, right? So I wish I had a relationship. I'm not capable of finding a relationship. A thought under that is, maybe I have high emotional needs that others don't understand, where it's easier to be alone or walk away. My depression gets in the way of meeting someone wanting connection or sex. I've met people in the past whom I could have worked things out with. It's a second cluster. So I didn't know how to communicate back then, or I didn't know enough about my attachment style. I wish I knew more about myself and communication in the past. And then there's your initial meetups. You leave thinking that we're on the same page, but then the other person doesn't follow up, right? And so what meaning do you make of that? Or what's the consequence of that? Or what does that say about you? Maybe I'm not attractive enough. Maybe I don't fit the gay ideal, the emphasis on appearance. Maybe I'm not successful enough. When you look at this column of thoughts, I wonder if you could select one that you think is the most prominent, that drives the feelings you've listed. So sadness, grief, envy, inadequacy, loneliness, and regret. What thought is most central for you? Do you think is the most prominent, that's contributing or driving the feelings?
I would say it's the third most recently, in the sense of, for the
Which one
first
is
one and
that?
the second one, I have more like self-awareness of. So the third one would be in my initial meetups. I leave thinking we're on the same page.
Yeah. So, okay, so you're thinking this one that I'm highlighting here. In my initial meetups, I leave thinking we're on the same page, but then the other person doesn't follow up.
Yeah.
Okay, so when that happens, I'm thinking, so that is like very, that's factual, right? And factual, it's important to start with the fact and then think about, what does it say about me if this is true? And you've come up with these sub thoughts. I'm not attractive enough, or maybe I don't fit the gay ideal, emphasis on appearance, or I'm not successful enough. I wonder if one of those sub thoughts jumps out at you most or more, sorry.
I think the second one.
Okay, so maybe I don't fit the gay ideal, or emphasis on appearance. So I bolded that one. I do want to make sure, I just want to go back up to the top for a second, because some of the last batch of thoughts you kind of talked about also seemed interesting. So I want to make sure we're not missing anything. So when you said, my depression gets in the way of me meeting someone, wanting connection or sex, to me, that speaks to like expectations of partners. And so if your depression gets in the way, then what's the consequence of that? Or what's the implication for your future or how other people see you?
That's a tough one. I think some people, from experience, some people see it as, I'm maybe emotionally not available, standoffish, rude. Some people think I'm unreliable. It depends on the situation, but there's a lot of consequences that comes with that.
Okay, so I'm often misunderstood as rude, or did you say unreliable?
Mm-hmm.
And you're thinking it's because of how depression affects you. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And now, if that's true, you're often misunderstood. I imagine does this affect just romantic relationships or also friendships?
Definitely both.
Both. So in the friendship realm, if you're misunderstood, then what happens?
I think there's two scenarios where I have a batch of people that I know that they already know what I'm going through and they understand what to expect and what not to.
Mm-hmm.
And for other people, they can be annoyed, triggered, angry.
Okay. I see. Okay. So I'm just trying to think about you've experienced some amount of loss in the past as a result of depression?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think it
Or your mental
affected.
health?
Yeah, it affected the way I build relationships with people. Like, to give you a very simple example,
Sure.
I, for example, would make a plan to go and see someone, and come the day of, I'm not in a state of mind to do that, and I would feel maybe paralyzed, not able to talk, not able to move, and I would cancel. Then not everyone would be okay with that, and then throughout the years, if I keep doing that, as someone who's been living with depression, it just becomes like, okay, that person's not interested, or I can't count on him to show up, or I can't count on him
Mm-hmm.
to be more available, if you want.
I see. Okay. Okay. I was going to come up with another thought, but I think you've laid it out quite well. If I were to combine those, so there's a thought here that says, my depression gets in the way of meeting someone, wanting connection or sex, and I'm often misunderstood as rude or unreliable because of how depression affects me. I wonder if there's kind of a belief that or a thought that people won't understand your depression because they haven't in the past.
I don't want to say everyone, but majority, yes, in the sense of,
Okay.
yeah, in the sense of like, you can tell they are affected about my actions or lack of, if you want.
Yeah. So many people, including prospective dates, won't understand or don't understand what depression can do. Is that accurate? Many people, including prospective dates, won't understand what depression can do.
I think I would just add, or maybe just if they know you're going through that. So if I'm meeting someone like new in my life, they might not know I'm dealing with depression. So I think also giving them the benefit of letting them know that you're going through that. So I can say everyone who knows won't understand, but before that, they won't. But maybe if they know, I'm sure it's different from one person to the other.
Okay, so I've modified it a bit. Tell me if this makes sense. Many people, including prospective dates, won't know about my depression. And if they do, they still may not understand what depression can do.
Yes.
Okay.
It can be simple as maybe they don't want to deal with it. Like, not everyone you meet is going to be like, okay, let me deal with that. They can choose not to and walk away.
Sure. That's true. Okay. I feel like we have a fuller list of automatic thoughts here. So before, the one you had highlighted was, maybe I don't fit the gay ideal, and there's an emphasis on appearance in the community. And is that still the one you want to pick? Because it's perfectly okay. I just want to make sure we fleshed out some of the other options. So once again, the ask here is for you to identify which of these automatic thoughts, right? So one of the ones with an arrow beside them, you think is really central or prominent in driving some of the difficult feelings that you've named here: the sadness, grief, envy, inadequacy, loneliness, and regret.
I would still maybe choose the same one.
Okay, beautiful. But now we have a whole list of ideas of what's going on in your brain, so that's good too. All right, so now that we've picked this one that says, maybe I don't fit the gay ideal / emphasis on appearance, I'm going to change it slightly so it doesn't say maybe anymore. We're just going to go with it as though it's a definitive thought. So I don't fit the gay ideal. Now, tell me some evidence that supports this hot thought. sorry, we call it a hot thought because it's the most prominent one. So,
Okay.
okay. So what's evidence from your life that suggests that you don't fit the gay ideal, or you don't fit in with this emphasis on appearance?
I think looking into the gay community, whether it's social media, group of friends, people I know, and what they are attracted to, what they're looking for, and maybe making conclusions out of that.
Yeah. And so I see what friends of mine are attracted to, and those guys don't look like me. Is that right?
Sure.
Okay. You said something about social media. Can you tell me a bit more? Like, what do you see on social media that helps you feel like you don't fit the gay ideal?
I think like going on Instagram or Facebook or whatever the case is, when you see gay gathering, gay parties, or anything that is in that scene, I think it's very prominent that it's muscled men who are maybe, I don't know what's the right word, but like very into building their bodies, being muscular, and fitting a certain criteria.
Yeah. So gay parties emphasize very specific body types. And yes, that makes sense to me. If they're emphasizing very specific body types, then it makes sense that you look at them and you're like, oh, that doesn't really look like me, or this is not the focus in my life. So how do I fit into all of this?
Also, when you see
ahead.
gay couples, going back to couples, like again, I'm not saying it's everywhere, but when it comes to social media, it's the gay couples that are highlighted are always both look they almost look, sometimes they look like twins. I hate saying it, but it feels the case most of the time. It's so again, yeah, you'd feel like I don't fit that criteria.
Right. So they look like muscle twins? Is that what it is?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. Sometimes freakishly they look a lot alike, but yeah, let's go with that.
Yeah. What's interesting to me here is, you're talking about how you don't fit this gay ideal. And I think I forgot to maybe ask, like, if you don't fit the gay ideal, well, how do you think that impacts your prospects for relationships?
I think for me, in my 20s, I don't think I would have been able to answer that for you. But now in my 30s, I have better clarity of what my ideal is. I'm way more focused on values, on personality, on how someone is approaching their life and how they deal with it. I think that's for me, that is the case right now. But yeah, if I go back to my 20s, I would be like, I have no clue.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So we're going to continue to evaluate this hot thought that I don't fit the gay ideal, emphasis on appearance. So I see what friends of mine are attracted to, and those guys don't look like me. Gay parties emphasize very specific body types. And when I see gay couples on social media, they look like muscle twins. So what's some evidence that does not support this hot thought? So this is hard. This is evidence that suggests you do fit a gay ideal, or that people find you attractive.
Evidence that does not support the hot.
So evidence that suggests you are attractive. You do fit an ideal, at least for some people.
Okay, I'm not sure. Like I'm not saying like I'm not. Okay, I hate saying that. I have met people who are interested in me, but
okay,
maybe it was not mutual. So
okay, let's pause there for a second. I've met people that were attracted to me. No problem. So I think that's good. And you might not have been attracted to them. They might not have been the right people. You've also talked a lot about how your own, the things you look for have also changed over time, right? So let's go back and let's continue to think about this. So what other evidence suggests that you do fit the ideal for people? Or that you fit an aesthetic around like appearance? Do you get compliments? Do people like your style? Have people said nice things about your body? Have you had sexual experiences that you really enjoyed with guys?
Um, I think for me, it's something it comes to me like a lot as someone means it as a compliment, and to me, it does not go that well. They're like, oh, I like Middle Eastern guys, and that's a trigger by itself. I'm like, this is not a compliment. Like, Middle Eastern guys are so different. I don't fit under the category of a typical Middle Eastern guy. So when you tell me that, you're again making me doubt how. So I'm not sure if
Okay.
that's
Okay. If people are putting you under this category, now I get that it's tokenizing, and then you're like, hey, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't look like these other Middle Eastern guys. But like, how do you make sense of it? Like, do you think they're actually attracted to you, or do you think they're lying? Like they've obviously seen a picture of you, or they've seen you in real life.
I don't think it's lying, more so of depending on the situation. You can be in a situation where someone is looking for just like casual sex there and then, and they will say anything to just make the moment be great. But then I don't know how to explain it.
Okay, so I know I'm appreciating this, but the idea that I don't fit in with the general aesthetic of Middle Eastern guys would actually fall under evidence that does support the hot thought that you don't, because it's about not fitting an ideal. So when we think about the other side of it, it seems like you're also thinking that people have found you attractive but said the wrong things.
Yeah, or maybe making assumption of who you are, or maybe of your making assumption of your genital size. Like, I don't know if you can bleep this, but I think you know what that's.
No, yes.
Making assumption of who you are, your sexual position in bed, and so on. It's just all
right.
Just set for you, and you're not given a chance to show that.
Okay, so people have liked you, but they've made assumptions and said the wrong things, which put you off, right?
Correct.
But you'll have to forgive me, but the part that I'm going to focus on here is like that people liked you.
So that's good.
Now, tell me about this gay ideal. Can you spell it out for me? What is this gay ideal?
Of course, it's an assumption. It might not be true. It's
Just
how I feel.
Tell me about it.
Yeah. I think it's, again, being someone who is extremely masculine, a build body, again, big, you know what, and all of those things. And again, maybe your financial status and maybe also up there. Like, all of the above is like, that's the ideal.
Okay. Now, what about your body do you think you like, or that other people like?
You know what? Again, it's that have changed a lot for me, where I'm at a point I learned how to love my body, and I don't really look at myself the way I used to, not even 2 years ago. So
how do you look at yourself now?
Oh, great. I love my body. I love everything about it. Like, that was a lot of hard work, like, to get there.
Okay. So I like my body, and I'm gay. Right? This helps shift the idea a little bit. So that's good evidence. Have other people appreciated specific parts of your body, whether it's a body part or hair, or I don't know.
Yeah. And I think, you know what, to be transparent and honest, that that goes back to the person in front of you. Again, you meet people who make you fall in love with your body, and you might meet someone who might make a comment that will take you backwards and where you might hate your body at the moment.
Yes. So you're saying here that you've had experiences where people complimented your body. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay, lovely. So we start with working in a retail and see a happy couple shopping together. You feel sadness, grief, envy, inadequacy, loneliness, regret. You're curious about their dynamic. And the hot thought, the thing that's really prominent for you is, like, first you think, of course, this is something I want, or why can't I make that happen? And the conclusion you draw is, well, I don't meet the gay ideal, and there's an emphasis on appearance in my community. What supports that idea? You see it on social media with your friends and at gay parties. And what evidence doesn't suggest that, like, goes against that idea that you don't fit an ideal or that you're not attractive, is that, people have liked you. You've met a number of people that have been attracted to you. You like your own body, and people have specifically complimented your body, like body parts, right? So, and I say that because people sometimes make this distinction between, people find my face attractive, but not other parts of my body, right? So you're saying people have found you attractive and they've complimented parts of your body. I wonder, what kinds of things would it be useful for you to tell yourself as an alternative thought to I don't fit the gay ideal?
I think for me right now, it's believing that I would meet someone who understands that and their ideal is different, and it would be enough for me to be their ideal image, like what they're looking for. Like, I don't have to fit the majority, but that person that I meet that I'm interested in, if that's the case for them, that would be enough for me.
Yeah. Give me a sec. I'm writing this down, sure, and I will read it out in a sec. Okay, so the two that I have is I could meet someone for whom I'm the ideal, or I don't need to be part of a dominant ideal, meaning like it doesn't have to be about like what everybody thinks, just mutually into the person I'm with. Those are both lovely. Are there other things that could be helpful alternative thoughts?
I think it's just those two. Again, at the end of the day, it's a bit of like acceptance, if you want.
Yes.
To accept as you grow older, certain things too. You accept that it's about your health, being happy, not more focused on, again, fitting in.
Mm-hmm. So my focus should be on happiness and health instead of like aesthetic similarity to others, like this twin phenomenon we're seeing. So aesthetic similarity to other gays. You know, one that I'm going to put out there, and because we're just brainstorming a list of alternative thoughts here, but because you talked about depression, I think it might, like, another thought that comes to my mind is that muscles can be a distraction from other qualities that are actually useful. Like, it's interesting that we focus on muscles in this community, but like nobody needs it. Like, are you are you hoping with your muscles to lift a car or push a bus
No,
over? Like, what is the purpose?
Maybe we're gonna run out of gas and they can push the car. I don't know.
Yeah, this is so it makes me also think like muscles can be a distraction from other qualities that are actually useful for a relationship. But anyway, that's just one of my thoughts that I'm putting out there. Are there any others that you want to add?
No, that's good. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to read them one more time. And I want you to think about each and think about which one do you like the best? As in, which one do you believe the most? Which one do you think would be most helpful for you? So here are the thoughts. I could meet someone for whom I'm the ideal. I don't need to be part of a dominant ideal, just mutually into the person I'm with. My focus should be on happiness and health instead of aesthetic similarity to other gays. Muscles can be a distraction from other qualities that are actually useful for a relationship. Which one do you like the best? Which one do you think speaks to you most?
The first.
The first one?
Yeah.
Beautiful. So I could meet someone for whom I'm the ideal. Now, I'm going to take us back. I want you to meditate on that for a moment. Like, just repeat it to yourself. Think about that couple you meet in the shopping center, store, whatever it is. And if you look at them and you're curious about their dynamic and you tell yourself, I could meet somebody for whom I'm the ideal. Where's your sadness at on a scale of 1 to 10 when you think about the alternative thought?
I think it would go definitely like lower.
Yeah, give me a number.
Yeah, a sense of hope. Maybe 4.
4.
Because at that moment, I think I would still be sad because I'm still missing that. What is
the
it?
sadness is totally okay. Yeah. We don't want to get rid of your emotions at all. We just want to see how the degree to which our thoughts can influence the intensity of our feelings. We don't want to get rid of them though. So for example, your grief might stay the same, it might go down, or it might even go up. What would your grief
rating be? I think my grief would stay the same just because it was related to a bit of a different scenario. Yeah.
So we'll keep the grief at 4. Where's your envy?
At that moment, I think it would stay the same.
5? No problem.
Yes,
your sense of inadequacy?
That would go back to maybe also 4.
Okay, so down from 7 to 4. And then how would you rate your loneliness?
Again, I think at that moment, maybe 4 instead of 5.
Okay.
Maybe,
that's okay. Now, other feelings we talked about, but we didn't rate, and you've mentioned them. There was regret, and then I heard you say hopeful, and I heard you say acceptance. So how would you rate your regret? If you say to yourself, I could meet somebody for whom I'm the ideal.
I would say 5.
Mm-hmm. And what about your hopefulness?
9.
Cool. And acceptance?
Even 9 too would be high.
Okay. Are there any other feelings that come up for you when you kind of think about this alternative thought?
I think I wouldn't say sense of relief, but I think I can link that to acceptance.
Yeah, that's okay. I think relief is still nice to put in there. Anything else?
No, I wouldn't say hopeful, but we said that, so no.
Okay. Yeah. And how would you rate your relief?
Also high, maybe 8 or 9.
Beautiful. Okay. I'm gonna share a few insights now that we're done this thought record, and then I'm going to open up the space for you to reflect a bit about what this process was like for you and things you might have noticed. So while I'm talking, you can also reflect on some of those thoughts. So first, I want to talk about the mood ratings. It seems like a lot of your emotions were steady, but that sadness and inadequacy were the ones that took a biggest decrease, right? And it seems like when you're not as sad or feeling as like when you're not feeling as inadequate, so you're not as hard on yourself, there's more space for feelings like hopefulness, acceptance, and relief. So I think that's really nice. And that's something to think about. Now, your situation was actually, it was quite broad. It was about a happy couple. You didn't specify, and I didn't ask you to specify if it was a straight couple or a gay couple or what kind of couple it was. And to me, that gave me some kind of information that you might be longing in general for a kind of connection. And to be honest, when we were doing the automatic thoughts, I spent more time on the stuff around depression because I wondered if there was a thought there that, it would be hard to meet somebody who understood you and some of your needs and what you need, like to feel supported. But I also wasn't surprised that we talked about the gay ideal, which is challenging. One of the tricky things about the gay ideal is that, in the way that you took it up, you started to see it as subjective, as in something that can change. And you're right, ideals do change with our, the spaces we access, the things we look at on Instagram versus not look at. Like if you unfollow a bunch of people, slowly, if you see less of something and see more of something else, how we understand ideals can change. But, when you think about, like you had mentioned, the early 20s, you had some pretty rigid ideas about what aesthetics were celebrated. And I just want to say, I don't think you're wrong. I think that's a hard thing that a lot of us have to contend with. We're like, oh, there's an ideal and I don't fit in. I like that you ended with, thinking about whom you could be the ideal for. What I love about that is really that you're saying to yourself, if that person's not that into me, then they don't meet my requirements. I don't want to be with them. And the way you phrase it, it really shows that you've taken a lot of power back, right? Another feeling you might experience is empowerment or control. So those were some of the things that I took away from your thought record. Kareem, tell me, what did you learn, or what was this process like for you?
It's really good. It's also, it was an eye opener for me for some of the things we discussed. Like, even maybe deep inside I knew of it. It was a reminder that sometimes I take for granted of certain situations that would lead to certain thoughts for myself.
Wait, slow down for a second. You would take for granted thoughts. I just heard a lot of words. I need
for sure.
specific.
So for example, like I do take for granted my depression by sometimes blaming myself and not really reminding myself that I am dealing with depression, and that can lead to, instead of just immediately blaming myself.
Right. So instead of saying I'm deficient or I'm not good enough or something's wrong with me, more like, no, I'm struggling with this thing called depression and it gets the better of me sometimes.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
I think, like that was a reminder for me. I kind of forgot about it, to be honest.
Okay. Yeah. Can you see yourself using a thought record like this for other situations in your life?
Yes, I think to be fully transparent, you need discipline to do this.
Yeah.
And you do need, it was doable for me right now because you've kind of facilitated it, helped me through it.
Yeah.
But I definitely see the value of doing it. Yeah.
Lovely. No, that's totally great. And it takes time for us to be able to do it on our own. I personally, I'm a therapist. And even when I want to do a thought record, I prefer it if somebody coaches me through it so that I can just talk and someone else can write down the things that are important. Kareem, I want to thank you so much for joining us today on the CBT Dive. And I hope this was helpful, and I hope you continue to use CBT skills and interventions to support your own well-being. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to the CBT Dive. Don't miss an episode. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at thecbtdive.ca. You can also listen on the go wherever you get your podcasts. To follow Rahim on social media, check out ladyativan.com. See you soon.